The NFL has a way of moving on before you even notice it. New faces arrive, schemes evolve, and the calendar flips with relentless speed. For most players, the idea of year 14 isn't just a milestone. It's a reminder of how rare longevity is at the sport's highest level. And for Travis Kelce, entering his 14th season isn't framed like a victory lap or a farewell tour. It's framed like a mission. The way he's shown up in training, the way he's talked about the work, and the way he's approached the grind all point to one message. Kelce isn't looking backward. He's looking forward, locked in for what he believes is still his next chapter in the NFL. At this stage of his career, Kelce doesn't need to prove he can play football. Everyone knows he can. Defensive coordinators know it too. Safeties and cornerbacks across the league have spent countless hours studying his routes, his formations, and the little tells that make his timing so difficult to defend. The challenge for a player like Kelce in year 14 isn't about talent. It's about precision. It's about staying sharp physically and mentally while the game gets faster, younger, and more aggressive around him. That's why locked in is the perfect phrase for how Kelce appears headed into year 14. It suggests intention rather than accident. It suggests a routine, refined to a point where the margin for error gets smaller, not larger. In the NFL, the difference between being a dominant weapon and being a weekly matchup problem is often found in the smallest details. How quickly you recognize leverage, how clean your transitions are into each step, how consistently you finish routes through contact. Kelce's entire career has been built on those details, and even if Father Time tries to slow the legend down, Kelce's consistently responded by sharpening what matters most. As players get older, it's easy to assume the game shifts away from what used to work. Maybe you lose a half step. Maybe your recovery time stretches. Maybe you find yourself needing to manage touches more carefully. For Kelce, those adjustments don't seem to be about shrinking the role, they seem to be about evolving the approach. The interesting thing about Kelce is that he doesn't rely solely on athleticism, even though he's always had plenty. What made him special from early in his Kansas City career is that he reads defenses like they're speaking a language. He understands where the holes will be before the coverage rotates, and he knows how to create leverage even when defenders think they've bracketed him. That's why his best seasons didn't just come from talent, they came from rhythm and intelligence. In year 14, that rhythm matters more than ever. The Chiefs' offense has evolved over time, and it will evolve again. But Kelce's value is consistent. He's a reliable decision point, a security blanket with teeth, and a matchup generator who forces defenses to account for something they can't fully solve. Even when he's not dominating the box score week to week, his impact shows up in how defenses behave. Linebackers creep toward him, safeties hesitate between run support and coverage responsibility. Cornerbacks find themselves in press situations longer than they plan because they can't just assume the ball won't come their way. Kelce has long been a player who changes the geometry of a game. In year 14, his job isn't only to catch passes, it's to bend the field. And that's still his skill. Longevity at this level isn't just about durability, it's about adaptation. Some veteran stars become static, still excellent, but increasingly dependent on what they already know. Kelce, at least in the way he's prepared publicly and professionally, gives the impression of someone who remains hungry to learn. His game has always had creativity, and he has never been the type to coast on reputation. Instead, the focus appears to be on tightening the bolts, route timing, communication, and the small cues that help the offense operate at full speed. When a quarterback trusts a target, the trust is earned every rep. The connection between Kelce and the Chiefs' quarterback situation has been built over time. But trust in the NFL isn't a one-time contract. It's renewed daily in film room sessions, practice patterns, and game week reps. For Kelce, staying locked in likely means staying curious, watching how linebackers sit in zone, studying how coverages shift when the Chiefs show certain personnel groupings, recognizing which defenses will roll their safety and which ones will spin the corner, understanding the difference between a coverage disguise that's meant to bait quarterbacks into quick throws and a disguise meant to win later in the play. That kind of preparation is what makes a veteran tight end so valuable. Sure, there are physical demands to the position, especially when you're dealing with brutal contact and constant motion between levels of the field, but the mental demands are just as heavy. In year 14, the mental part becomes the advantage. It keeps Kelce ahead of the curve, even if the margins on speed are shrinking. One reason people are fascinated by players like Kelce is that they're constantly working against a calendar that doesn't care about greatness. Injuries are part of the NFL ecosystem, and tight ends experience unique physical stress. They're asked to block through contact, run routes into hostile leverage, and adjust to throws at angles that require precise body control. So locked in also implies something practical, the kind of health approach that doesn't wait for a problem to appear. It's training aimed at durability. It's recovery taken seriously. It's understanding the body well enough to know what it can handle and what it can't, even if you feel good one day and not so good the next. Kelce's always been conditioned for high-level performance, but conditioning at this stage is different from conditioning early in a career. Young players build capacity like scaffolding. Veteran players maintain capacity like a finely tuned machine. They look for the most efficient way to be ready, without unnecessary wear. That doesn't mean playing scared, it means playing smart. The difference between a great season and a faded one can be one nagging issue that never fully resolves, or one workload adjustment that came too late. For Kelce, the goal going into year 14 is clear. Be available, be effective, and keep the body reliable long enough for the offense to trust him completely. When people talk about Travis Kelce, they often start with statistics, receptions, yardage, touchdowns, and those numbers matter, because greatness is measured in production. But the most important part of Kelce's role is how he functions inside the offense's identity. He's an organizer, he's a safety net, he's a red zone chess piece, he's the chain mover who can force defenses to cover him even when the formation suggests they might not have to. And because tight end is a position where defenders can crowd the line and try to disrupt timing, the quarterback needs a target who can get open quickly and who can win at intermediate depths. Kelce does that in ways that go beyond route running. He understands how to create separation through subtle movements and leverage changes, and he understands how to help the quarterback in the pocket when throwing windows close. In year 14, that value remains even if the volume changes slightly. Teams don't lose respect for Kelce because he's older. They lose respect for him only when they can clearly stop him. And that's not something defenses consistently manage. Kelce's entire career has been a reminder that a tight end can still be the most important offensive tool even when the league tries to diversify its weapons. What makes that so striking is how many ways Kelce impacts a game. A defense can't just assign one player and call it done. When Kelce's work in the middle of the field and stretching coverage with play-action timing, defenders have to choose their poison. And choices create vulnerabilities. That's where the Chiefs often find big plays, and that's where Kelce remains central. Year 14 also comes with a different kind of pressure, expectations. Kelce is not only a high-performing athlete, he's an NFL icon. With that status comes constant attention, constant analysis, and constant narrative. Veterans can struggle when the outside world feels louder than the inside world. But Kelce's public persona, composed, confident, and still willing to work, suggests that he's learnt to treat noise as background. That's a critical skill. The NFL is loud, media cycles don't pause for injuries, and fans don't slow down just because a player is older. Staying locked in means continuing to treat every practice like it matters, every film session like it matters, and every week like it matters. That kind of discipline is part of what separates the greats from the good ones. Kelce's been great for long enough that the next season could easily be approached like an extension of a brand. Instead, his preparation indicates he's treating it like a football season first. Some seasons are simply seasons, others feel like they carry an extra weight. Year 14 for Kelce fits into that second category, not because he's chasing a number, but because it represents the kind of career arc that doesn't happen often. There aren't many tight ends who redefine what the position can do for more than a decade. There aren't many players who can maintain that level of impact while the league changes around them. There aren't many who continue to find ways to be central even when defenses are specifically built to take them away. That's why his locked-in approach matters. It tells you the story isn't finished. It tells you that the work ethic remains, the competitive fire remains, and the focus hasn't turned into complacency. And maybe that's the best part of all. In an era where so many athletes struggle with the shift from proving to maintaining, Kelce looks like someone who still believes in the power of improvement. Even if his fundamentals are elite, he seems determined to keep his execution sharp enough to win the next rep, the next route, the next late-game opportunity. By the time a player reaches year 14, most conversations inevitably drift toward what comes next. Retirement questions, legacy discussions, the inevitable, how much longer? Speculation. But for Travis Kelce, the early signals point to something else entirely. He's locked in for year 14 at the NFL, and that phrase carries a specific meaning. The season isn't being treated like a conclusion. It's being treated like a continuation of a standard he's set, one built on preparation, intelligence, and toughness. The Chiefs will still need him to do what he does: create separation, adjust on the fly, win matchups, and make the offense operate with confidence. But what stands out is that Kelce doesn't sound like a player who believes his role is automatic. He sounds like a player who understands that the NFL demands renewal every year, and he's approaching that renewal with the same seriousness that helped him become one of the defining tight ends of his era. Year, the 14th of May, be the number on the calendar, but for Travis Kelce, it's not a stopping point, it's a signal. The focus is there, the work is there, and the mindset is clear. He's still locked in.